expert says SpaceX's mega rocket could make or break the space industry. Do you agree with us that there would be nothing more spectacular to fawn over in the space industry if not for SpaceX? A kind of hegemony might be in place with the overall progress of the world's space program, leaning on the rocket technology of a private company with the world's most giant rocket in the news. Hit the like button and stay through to the end of this video to learn how SpaceX can determine the future of the space industry. SpaceX's Starship can't seem to get out of the headlines, and for a good reason, given the exponential advancement it offers to the whole of humanity. Are we set to finally begin another push for moon missions and Mars colonization on a more energized scale and with more purpose? This video will take a candid look at how SpaceX's mega rocket could change things forever in the space industry. Welcome to your favorite channel, Unlimited SpaceX. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more exciting news about SpaceX projects and Elon Musk's many controversies. Back in 2019, SpaceX announced through their enigmatic CEO that they would be launching a unique new rocket that would be the final cog in the wheel to their plan to go to Mars. But fast forward 3 years, it appears now that the missile will be helpful for other intensive purposes and other agencies, especially NASA. It has always been one of NASA's prime objectives to build a lasting human presence on the moon. That sounds more like they want humans to inhabit the moon, well, maybe not in the sense that Elon Musk wants us to colonize Mars. The Starship is pivotal to Elon Musk's plans and the US's NASA's defense and scientific projects. The vast rocket will carry enough cargo to enable the establishment of a moon base, courtesy of both SpaceX and NASA. That is a formidable partnership that other nations are most wary of, taking China into consideration, who have nonetheless kicked at some of SpaceX's other projects, Starlink stating that the US could weaponize them against other nations' spacecraft. With the aid of the Starship, NASA could make a formal return to the moon's surface. It seems like the perfect lander for their eventual project set for 2024. NASA is counting on the resources of a private establishment like SpaceX in a public-private relationship to overcome odds that have impeded their return to the peak of space exploration. Several prototypes of the rocket have been tested with the new Super Heavy booster, which works perfectly fine and would be used to carry out the orbital tests of the Starship. The initial prototypes were not as huge as this, and Musk stated that those were only useful for low-range flights since they were not designed for a venture into orbit. The initial tests have given finesse to the eventual Starship that we know to be capable of carrying 100 tons worth of cargo and about 90 to 100 passengers. It makes sense since it's part of the broader scheme to get 1 million people to settle on Mars. Everything is set with the Raptor engines already tested and affirmed to be fully functional, since they've been deployed in some of SpaceX's other rockets, such as the Falcon 9 rocket. Given the size of the Starship, it seems only natural that it uses a higher number of Raptor engines, which is about 7. 31 Raptor engines will power the Super Heavy booster that would power it into orbit. Many efforts have been poured into making Starship the best rocket the world has ever seen. Even their smaller rockets, such as the Dragon vehicle, have colossal significance to the pursuit of excellence in space, with their capability to carry humans into low orbit and to the International Space Stations. It was used to launch American astronauts to the ISS after about 8 years of absence in space. The impact of SpaceX in the space industry has set a challenge for competitors with the ability to cut the costs of making the rockets successfully, and they even made the rockets reusable. No part of the rockets can be deemed wasted after returning to Earth. They have efficiently modified fuels with efficient engines that other space agencies would find desirable. Expanding on how SpaceX's Starship has impacted the space industry in terms of the cost of launches can be viewed in retrospect. It cost $18,500 per kilogram, and the payload that a single rocket could carry was about 27,500 kilograms, which meant that $508,750,000 was spent to launch one rocket. The space shuttle found that much cargo for about $54,500 per kilogram, totaling $1.5 billion per rocket launch. That's insane. That's insane. And that price per kilogram persisted for 30 years between 1970 to 2000. Now let's see what Elon Musk has done with SpaceX's rocket projects. This could be shocking to you, so pay attention. When SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket launched for the International Space Station, its price was meager. And it was not even about it being a smaller rocket than the Starship and maybe the space shuttle. Its cargo cost was about $2,720 per kilogram. Oh, we know what you're thinking. Wow. Just wow. You never knew that? Well, now you do. Let us do a wee bit of calculation again. If Falcon 9 could carry the same amount of payload as mentioned earlier, about 27,500 kilogram values at $2,720 per kilogram, the total expense of the launch would be $74.8 million. Now that is some jaw-dropping stat. It makes a lot of difference given that the high cost back in the 1950s made it impossible for many countries to embark on their space programs. SpaceX has pretty much inspired state and other private actors to explore the space industry. And despite the tough competition offered by private companies such as Blue Origin, United Launch Alliance, and Orbital ATK, SpaceX remains the most significant of them all. The Starship is set for a couple of test trips to reach the solar system and alter the direction of the US space program. NASA is no longer the wasteful package it used to be, with its inability to meet the schedule set by the US government and caused the government to cut costs on its budget and other technological challenges. As a private agency, SpaceX is doing all the work for them. The new space industry could witness a lot of excitement, and maybe it could be hit by a crushing disappointment riding on the success or failure of SpaceX's giant rocket. The competitiveness in the space industry is admirable, and we are excited to see Asian countries such as the UAE, Japan, South Korea all getting set to launch their first missions using their astronauts. You think that must mean that they have their shuttle base and built their rockets? Not necessarily. The news reaching us is that they all intend to book the service of Elon Musk's Starship. There were also talks about the potential of NASA's giant moon rocket to be helpful to these nations, among other things. We see a brighter prospect for all ventures to the moon and later Mars on both ends. Starship's project in particular has won over the hearts and inevitably the wallets of wealthy investors from all over the world. SpaceX's contribution to the record-shattering investment that has gone into the space economy is breathtaking, and the estimated total is valued at about $12.4 billion in 2021 alone. A lot of money has gone into ensuring that we hear news about space tech deployment and use. The eventual gratification is tied to fulfilling the purposes these investments were made, which go a little beyond just profit-making. Don't be shocked to know that people are already booking a spot on the Starship for the eventual move to Mars if things play out as planned. More investments are expected to go in this year, according to experts. If there's anything to be alarmed about, it is the production challenges that SpaceX might be having with the production of Raptor engines deployed in the first orbital test flight of the Starship. It has to work out, or the entire space industry is stuck in limbo, according to the observations of analysts at Global Data. One of the associate analysts has retorted on just how ambitious the Starship project is and the seemingly infinite amount of risk levels attached to it. According to him, everything about it seems surreal in its payload and quick turnaround time that would put it at the level of basic commercial aviation. We might be on the cusp of seamless access to space and a boom to the commercial area. On the other hand, if the Starship project crumbles, investors won't just butt out of its length, but it would hurt the chances of other space agencies and private companies. That would only be right, given that there are only so many risks that people can stomach. The orbital test flight does carry an unexpectedly high significance for investors in the space industry. What would you do as a SpaceX investor if the Starship falters in its preliminary orbital test?